Hi, today we're going to be looking at databases and how we could gain access to bibliographic information from them in order to create a bibliometric network. We're also going to be looking at how you can merge data sets from different databases together. In this diagram here, you'll see the different steps that we can use to create a bibliometric network. The first step here, data retrieval, involves gaining data from different databases like Web of Science, Scopus, PubMed, Dimensions, and this is what we're going to be looking at in this video. Once you get the data in the form of a data file or through an API, you could then pre-process this data by removing any duplicates like the same publications, the same authors, but sometimes some authors may be have abbreviated names in some publications and not others. So you could remove those duplicates, and you could also reduce data, and that could involve removing any kind of publication that isn't relevant to your study. You could then extract networks like the co-occurrence networks or the bibliographic coupling networks that we saw in the previous video, and then normalize that data based on some sort of similarity index to then create clusters. And then you could analyze them, visualize them, and then interpret them for your bibliometric or literature review study. This is a nice diagram that shows you what's sort of going on. We're getting a bibliographic data source from a database such as Web of Science, Scopus, and Dimensions. These three are going to be the ones that we're going to be looking at in this video. And then you could create a sort of citation co-authorship network or any sort of network or strategic diagram for your study. I created this table here that compares Web of Science, Scopus, and Dimensions. And these different aspects are important to keep in mind when you're trying to decide which database you'd like to use for your study. Web of Science and Dimensions appears to have more social science and humanities and arts-related publications, while Scopus appears to be more biased towards STEM-related studies. I definitely encourage you to look at these different databases and carry out the same kind of search query to see if there are any differences between the information that you're getting. From here, you can see that Dimensions appears to be the most expansive out of all these three, with 136 million publications and over 50,000 journals. It's a newer database, and it's also open access and free to use, unlike Scopus and Web of Science, where you need paid access to these resources. So you could use Web of Science and Scopus through your institution or by giving them a fee. It's also important to know that Scopus is considered the gold standard in most literature review studies as well. Another important thing to keep in mind is that certain software will be only compatible with a certain data file. For instance, CiteSpace appears to be only compatible with Web of Science data files. And for any other data files, you would need to then convert it to a Web of Science file in order to analyze that information. You can also look at the coverage of documents. Web of Science appears to have documents from the 1900s onwards, but Scopus and Dimensions kind of go further back in the past from the 17 and 1600s. Okay, so now we're going to be carrying out our search queries on the different databases. Right here, you can see the Web of Science webpage, and I'm affiliated with Rutgers, so I just searched for Web of Science Rutgers, and this is the first link that came up. In the search box, you can then search for all fields, which searches for all searchable fields, including the authors and the titles and publication titles. And you could also search for topic, which searches through the titles, abstract, and keywords. Or you could be a bit more specific and only search through the titles or any other aspect of bibliographic information. In this case, I'm just going to be looking at topic. I can then add my search query. So in this case, I want to be looking at infant development. I'd also like to be specific and look at infant neurodevelopment as well. So I can just go down and add a row and then click on the operator. So you can say and, or not. In this case, I'm going to go with or and say in quotation marks, infant neurodevelopment. because I want exactly this term. If I don't really care about the order, I can get rid of the quotation marks. I definitely encourage you to look at different search operators in websites like this, as it can give you an idea of how best to write your search when carrying out your bibliometric study. Some tips are given in this website, and one interesting thing that I saw was the wildcard. So you can give an asterisk or a question mark to then replace a character before, within, or after that search term. So it saves you a lot of time and makes you quite efficient when you're searching for things. So now that I've got that done, you can also look at the advanced search if there's anything in particular that you would want to look at. And so in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and search. And right here, I see that there are 4,855 results from Web of Science core collection. And here you can see on the left-hand side, filters that you could use to select certain years or certain types of information like document types, review articles. I often just include articles in my literature review as well as meeting abstracts, as sometimes review articles can make your data seem more redundant. So I'm going to just refine them. And then an interesting thing about Web of Science is that you can then analyze these results on the database itself. So you can look at the different fields of study that it uses, like pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. And you can see it in the form of a chart as well as a bar chart. You can also look at a citation report, which will give you an idea of the publications and citations over time. So as you can see here, the line graph shows the citations and the purple bar charts show the publications over time. And you can also know which publication had the most number of citations as well. In this case, it would be this one. So now in order to export your data file, you can then click on export and then click on the data file you'd like to use. A lot of bibliometric software will let you know which data file it is compatible with and uses to create networks or other diagrams. So in this case, for VOS Viewer, it uses plain text file as well as tab delimited file. And the other software that we're going to be looking at, like SciMat and SiteSpace, also use plain text files as well. In this case, I'm going to be adding this data to a reference management software called Zotero in order to merge this database with Scopus as well as dimensions. So I'm going to be clicking on RIS. So with Web of Science, it only exports records from 1 to 1,000 records at a time. If you select this option, if you would like to use the full record of information that includes citations, you could click on this option and then click export. So we have 4,202 results right here. So in order to export all of these results, you would then go back to our export records to RIS and then type in 1001 to 2000 and carry out the same sort of process until you reach 4,202 results. So now we're going to be looking at Scopus. On the Scopus website, you can then add your search query. It would be the same as what we did last time, so infant development. And you can choose to search through the title, abstract, and keywords, as well as all fields together for any of these in the list here. You can then add a search field. I would like to say or, and then infant neurodevelopment. You would then search for the results. And since I just want the document type to be articles as well as conference papers, I can add that here and click on limit to. And also with Scopus, you can click on analyze results. And then you can click which year range you'd like to analyze. So this looks at 1903 to 2023. And it shows you the documents by year. And it also shows you the documents per year by the source, and documents by the authors and affiliations, as well as type, subject area, country, and even funding sponsor. So if we were to go back, so if you'd like to export, you can click over here. It's important to note that CSV is compatible with all of the different bibliometric software that we're going to be using here. But today we're just going to be clicking on RIS as we'd like to merge it with the rest of the database files. I'm going to click on RIS and then click on citation information, bibliographical information, abstract and keywords. And you can also click on include references so we can have that as well. You can choose all the documents on this page. In this case, I'd like to do about 0 to, it says that I can only select up to 6,320. So I'm going to be writing that number in. And then, so 1 to 6,320, and then hit export. And so you'll get all of these 6,320 documents. So now we're going to be looking at dimensions. So for the dimensions database, I usually just scroll down to where I can see the search box. And then I just type in my query here. So I'm going to be searching for infant development or infant neurodevelopment. So as you can see here, you can see 101,023 publications. If you'd like to filter out these results even more, you could go to publication type. And then click on article. And I'd also like to look at preprint as well. And then I can just click limit to. And so here you can see that it's lowered the number down to 68,168. And the interesting thing about dimensions is it also has its own analysis feature. So it looks at citations and it also tries to predict what's going to happen the following year as well. It also looks at the various researchers present as well as source titles as well. So now, in order to save or export these results, you would need to first log in to use the feature. So I'm going to do that right now. So now that I've logged in, I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save or Export and click on Export Results. And you can choose to export it as a CSV or comma separated file, which is compatible with all of the bibliometric software that we're going to be looking at in this video series. But in this case, I'm going to be looking at Export for Reference Manager. So it will then send you an email when the export is ready, and then you can download it through the link present in your email. It also has a maximum of 500 items per download as well. Okay, so now that we've downloaded all of our different data files from these three databases, so Dimensions, Scopus, as well as Web of Science, we can go ahead and merge all of these data files on our reference management software. So in this case, I'm going to be using Zotero, which is a free software that you can use. So I'm going to go ahead to go to Zotero and then click on this button and then click on New Group. It will then take me to their Zotero's webpage and then ask me for my username or email. And then I can choose a name for the group. So in this case, I'm just going to write tutorial and then infant development. I can choose to create a public open membership so anyone can view this group, or public closed membership where anyone can view it. But in order to edit, members need to apply or be invited, or I can just do a private membership. In this case, I'm just going to choose private membership, so only I can view this group. And then save settings. Okay, so now you'd have to close Zotero, and then you can open it back again. So now that you closed it and reopened it back again, you should be able to see your new collection here. I'm just going to click on this, and then I can go back to my data files. In this case, I'm going to click on Dimensions, and then I'm going to say Open With, and then it'll ask me if I want to import the file, and then I'm going to say Import into New Collection. So I'm going to say OK, and then you will be able to see all of the publications being imported here. So as you can see here, you can also rename the collection. And then in this case, I just want to say Dimensions for this one. And so while this is loading, you can go ahead and add in the other data files as well from Web of Science as well as Scopus. So now you can just wait for this to all import. Okay, so now that you've imported all of your data files, you can go ahead and click on each of the folders that you imported, and you can see on the right-hand side the number of publications or the number of items in this view. So if you go ahead and click on the collection as a whole, you can then see that there are 8,361 items in total. Now, the thing about this data set is that it has a lot of duplicates. For instance, these three different files are duplicates of one another. And you can click on a publication and you can see various pieces of information listed here, such as the author, and you can change the author names. Say if you would like to write the full names of the authors instead of the abbreviations, you can definitely do that and edit it on Zotero. So the great thing about Zotero is that you can actually go to duplicate items, and then you will be able to see all the list of duplicate items from your data set, and you can then merge them together. So right here, you can see that this version is from Web of Science, as seen here, and then it doesn't seem to have an abstract, but you could always go ahead back to that file source by maybe searching for the DOI or going back to the database itself to see if you could insert an abstract as well. So if you look at these two data files, you can see that this data file from Scopus actually has an abstract. So as I'd like to keep this field as kind of the main field that shows up in my data set, I'd click on this, and then I'd click on merge two items. So this would be the master item. And then I can go ahead and do the same for each of these publications. And if you'd like to know the total number of duplicate items, you can go back and click on duplicate items again. And then if you were to do Control A or Command A and select everything, you can see that there are 3,464 items in total. So you can go ahead down this list and select the item, the master item, and merge the items together. And so when you're done with removing all the duplicate items and this folder here is empty, you can then create a RAS file from all of these different data sets. So you can go right click on this and then click on Export Library. And then you can click on RAS. And these are the different file types that you could use. You can choose Unicode UTF-8 for this. Click OK. And so now you can save this to whichever folder you choose. And then I'm just going to hit save. And then you should be able to get an RAS file. So now that you're exporting it to RAS, you can then put it into Boss Viewer or SciMat and analyze the data from all three databases as a whole.